Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here.
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I am Stash Siolkowski.
And today is...
I love that look.
You seem surprised, Stash.
Why? That I am Stash Siolkowski?
Yes.
I am surprised every day when I wake up and I'm still alive.
Okay, well, let me tell our listeners that today is July 1st, Monday, July 1st, 2024. Let me get myself in the right century. And our theme today is Independence Day. And I think we have a wide variety of stories to share with you, our listeners.
Well, I'll tell you, July 1st. The beginning of the new year, right?
Indeed.
Whoever decided July 1st was the beginning of the new year in any way?
Well, it is halfway through the year that starts January 1st.
I know, but why? Why did they, businesses, this is the beginning of the new business year or something? Because
businessmen think differently than the rest of us.
I know. And everybody has got to make a special day for themselves. It's like everybody's got to have, oh boy, let's have a new day here, a celebration. We have more special days than there are days in the year.
But I love that.
Why?
Because I love celebrations, and I love being able to celebrate onions and the Irish and Canada Day, and all kinds of things. I mean, if we can have an Independence Day for those patriots in the United States, why shouldn't there be a Potato Day? I mean, really.
Anybody can have anything they want. That's the way this world works.
Yeah, it's not like we're closing down the government for Onion Day or Potato Day.
No. The government closes itself down.
Yes, it does.
The government hasn't been working for a while.
Okay, but we're not quite going to go right there, at least not yet. Would you like to tell us about Speak before we
Speak? Yes, coming up.
In politics and...
Coming up on July 9th. Catherine Fahey and Daniel Van Allen. And they're going to do cranky storytelling. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be cranky or unkind or irritable. It means that they're going to use a box of some kind with tubes stuck down into the box. And on those tubes will be a long strip of paper that is wound up on one side. And then as they're telling their stories, they will turn those tubes, and the screen, the paper will move across the box and will show drawings or pictures of the story. And they're called Crankies. And it's been my pleasure to perform actually with someone who is very good at the Crankies. And, Susanna Connolly Holstein. And I'm looking forward to it. And you can go to speakstoryseries.com and get all the information. The performance will be at 7:30 in Shepherdstown. And speakstoryseries.com will give you all the details, and you can get the address, where the performance will be, and you can sign up to get season tickets, or you can donate some money, or you can sponsor a storyteller, and you can get involved in a really great program. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yeah, me too. I'm hoping to be on Zoom because I will be in Frederick, during the day, and it's too much for me to come home and then go out again. All the way to Shepherdstown. So, but I do hope to be. Hope
Why
to
are you
see
going to be in
you.
Frederick?
I have a Toastmasters meeting in the morning. Early in. But I did want to talk about stories in the round because I
There
want
you go.
everyone to know that Andy Offutt Irwin will be here in Hagerstown on July 15th, Monday, at 7 p.m. at Stories in the Round at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Hagerstown, 13245 Steerfoss Pike. And because we are 2 weeks early than our usual monthly event, I have already started publicizing and sending out flyers. So just want everybody to know that. And if you want to register, get save a seat, you can call me at Fanny Crawford. Well, no, you can call me at 301-730-1638, or you can email me at fenitsky@hotmail.com.
Or they could call you at Fanny Crawford's phone number.
Yes, 301-730-1638.
I heard your name a lot yesterday.
You did?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
were you yesterday?
We were at the Kennedy Center and we were seeing a great production of Funny Girl.
Ah,
Fanny.
yes, I saw that, the original, when I was 13.
Good Lord, I
Barbra
didn't even know they
Streisand.
had theaters then.
My mother grew up with Fanny Brice, not in person, but in New York City. Fanny Brice
Right.
was part of her milieu, her
Wow.
cultural
Well,
background.
it was quite a performance. It was wonderful. And it was we had a wonderful date. It was a great day. You know, we went down for a matinee and we had reserved parking under the Kennedy Center, and the parking was delightfully easy, and we found a nice spot right close to the elevators and had no trouble finding our car after the performance, and everything was done so well. The Kennedy Center is such a great place to visit. You know, we've gone there a number of times. I just love going there. If we lived close enough, I'd want to have a season ticket to there because it's so good.
Would be.
Yeah.
We should go together. We should make a dual spousal excursion to the Kennedy Center sometime.
That would be good. Maybe we could see one of our favorite shows. That would be nice. I've seen some good shows there, you know, really.
Yeah.
So.
Good place to go. Okay, well, on our theme of Independence Day, would you like to start us out?
You know me, I always like to say ladies first.
Well, I'm willing to go first, but I don't have to.
I know, but I like you to go first. That gives me time to learn something.
Okay, I will go first. All right, well, I actually have two separate connected stories. So this will be my first one, and if there's time, I will tell the second one. So many of our listeners know that my great-grandfather, Thomas Henry Barnes, who was always called TH by the family, was born in 1849, died 1942, when he left the family a 100-page handwritten manuscript, an autobiography that included the highlights of his own life, some of the highlights of the lives of his own parents, his brother Peter, his wife Mary Bell, and her parents, and a bit about their 3 surviving children. Now, T.H. started writing this history in 1924 at the request of the New York Colored Orphans Asylum in Manhattan, where he spent part of his early years, about 5 years from 1860 to 1865 during the Civil War. Now, T.H.'s father, Henry, was an enslaved Black man born on a farm near Richmond, Virginia, but purchased as a child by an Englishman called Reverend Barnes. Reverend Barnes took young Henry, T.H.'s father, to the Reverend's home base in Hagerstown, Maryland, where Reverend Barnes operated a business leasing out African-American, enslaved African-American men and boys to work for individuals, for farms, and other business establishments in the city and the environs. And Reverend Barnes had this unpaid workforce educated in reading, writing, and the basics of mathematics, and then had each man trained in trades lucrative to him as hotel waiters and cooks, skilled gardeners, chimney sweeps, tailors, etc., so that he could lease them out. Henry was trained as a seed man and a gardener, and the proceeds of these men's work eventually made Reverend Barnes a wealthy man. Now, Henry was freed. He was manumitted about 1835, when he was in his early 20s, by the elderly Reverend, as that old man lay dying, and sent north. These 19 men were sent north with other, as a group, to get them out of the reach of the Reverend's heirs, the family, who he assumed would contest his will, that freed his workforce. Now, there's something of a cliffhanger in that story, in the autobiography, wherein Henry's son, T.H. Barnes, my great-grandfather, tells of Henry's flight north and how Henry barely escaped recapture and re-enslavement, finally rescued by the white citizens of Lewistown, PA, in Mifflin County, where he then settled. The story of his father's escape ends with his son, the author of this manuscript, writing. I use T.H. Barnes' voice insofar as I've been able to recreate. My father told me that Reverend Barnes was a cold-hearted exploiter of colored men and boys, building his fortune on their unpaid labor in all kinds of weather and working conditions, and that the gifts of his education and skill training were two of the greatest gifts of my father's life. As a freedman, that education was the insurance of his independence. T.H. Barnes goes on to write about his mother, Henry's wife, who T.H. calls the politician in the family. Now, though her schooling was very limited, she was a natural mathematician and had wonderful memory of names, dates, and details. From an early age, she was enthusiastic on the subjects of education, politics, temperance, and was well posted on the great national questions of the time. She was determined that I should have a clear understanding of the world around me, and it is to her that I owe my curiosity about life and people in general. She daily shared with me the secrets of mathematics and the importance of reading books when available, but mostly the newspapers of our community. She did not read well, just enough to make out the headlines of the major stories. Young as I was, I saw and heard much that deeply interested me. Mother taught me to listen to the words of others, to attend to their actions, and to try to make sense of the needs and desires that motivated the men, women, and even the children around us. T.H. Barnes wrote about the July 4th celebrations he remembered, but those came later when he was a student at the New York Children's Orphan Asylum. He likened those New York City celebrations to some of the parades and hullabaloos that he remembered growing up in Lewistown, that his mother either exposed him to or explained to him when they were going on in their village. She gave me my first lessons in politics, making me a perpetual Republican. And I have a vivid memory of watching the parades during the election campaigns of 1856, before the Civil War. Brass bands, banners flying, throwing my cap in the air. Make a joyful noise, Tommy, were Mother's instructions, and the Republican marchers in the parade threw large copper cents to me as they waved, passing out gate. These were the supporters of the former Vice President Millard Fillmore. Mother explained these men supported schools for people, for our people, and many of them were willing to speak out for freedom for colored people, calling for abolition of slavery all over the country. Now, days later, Mother forced me into the house, locking doors and drawing the curtains as another procession passed. I tried to remain at the curtain window to observe these men, but Mother pulled me back just as derisive epithets and showers of stones were hurled at our front door. Mother explained these marchers represented Southern sympathizers who wrote in the newspapers that colored people were not human and deserved neither education nor citizenship. She bade me look round at our hardworking, kind, generous colored neighbors for evidence to the contrary of their determination to sustain their families in freedom and independence. Because of these parades, the political hullabaloo is still so vivid to me these 85 years later. I've made it a point to read some about that election in the years since. To my knowledge, that was the only time in the country's history a political party refused to renominate the incumbent president and then won. Incumbent Democrat President Franklin Pierce had not been successful in resolving the raging civil war in Kansas territory over slavery. The party was concerned that Pierce could not win the election, so James Buchanan defeated Pierce at the 1856 Democratic National Convention and then soundly trounced Millard Fillmore in the general election. Now, those parades and my mother's enthusiasm for teaching me the lessons of history and politics remain with me as a beacon of my mother's concern for my education and place in our community examples of the power of leaders to galvanize ordinary citizens for right or wrong. My father died when I was but 8 years old. Quick consumption, we called it. You would say pneumonia. Perhaps working out of doors all his life, winter and summer, with barely any accommodation for foul weather or health emergencies, had something to do with his early death. Mother had a difficult time after father died. She was ill for more than a year and lived just 3 years without him. I well understood the night she died. Mother gone, I was an orphan. I was rescued by Mother's brother, my beloved Uncle Peter, Aunt Caroline, and their daughters, Lizzie and Sadie, who took me home to live with them in Brooklyn, along with my younger brother, Peter. Now, the difficulty with this arrangement was that although cousin Lizzie
a diligent and talented music student, and my fun-loving cousin Sadie, just about my age, had been accepted into the local white school. They were light complexioned, while I and Peter were obviously dark-skinned colored children and therefore unacceptable. Uncle Peter therefore enrolled us in the New York Colored Orphans Asylum across the river in Manhattan as half orphans at $1.50 per week per child, with the option to bring us home with him at any time. That 4-story brick building covered a full New York City square block from 43rd to 44th Streets along Fifth Avenue, a well-respected and well-endowed school and residence for 300 mostly freeborn colored children, founded by Quakers, the Society of Friends, and operated for more than 100 years under the care of several Quaker meetings. Now, some of you have heard me describe my affection for the school, my respect for the staff and the faculty, and my own accomplishments there, singing and traveling with the children's chorus that toured the mid-Atlantic seaboard, for example. If you have heard those stories, you likely have also heard me tell of the burning of the New York Colored Orphans Asylum by an angry mob during the draft riots of 1863, the death of Chief O'Brien of the New York City Fire Department on the steps of the orphanage as he tried to keep the mob from entering the building. The deliverance of 300 children through the back gates by courageous police and a small army of brave citizens, our escort to the 35th Street Police Station. I'm often asked to tell of these events, which were well documented in the newspapers of the day. The colored man we saw hanging dead from a lamppost, crowds toppling, telegraph poles that cut in the wires, barrels of oil pushed against the sides of buildings and set afire, and our eventual rescue by the first begrimed and weary veterans fresh from the battlefield at Gettysburg and the great conflagration there. 1,000 Zouave soldiers in uniforms modeled on Moroccan soldiers with the French army. How those soldiers escorted 300 children through the mob of gang members, men and women armed with guns and bludgeons, to the police gunboats lined up to carry us to safety on Blackwell Island in the East River. And on the island, the 2,000 grieving colored survivors of those 3 days of murderous mayhem. Dozens of colored people dead, homes and public buildings destroyed. Well, the institution of the New York Colored Orphans Asylum was resurrected, and over the years that I was there, I received a fine education in literature, American history, and music, among other subjects. I well remember memorizing the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. You know them as the Bill of Rights. Oh, I beg you not to ask for that recitation today. I have vivid memories of 4th of July celebrations at that institution. We were permitted to go up on the roof every evening of the 4th of July each year to watch the fireworks across the city. And that was a stupendous sight for children. Oh my goodness, we had such joy and pride in being able to witness them, hearing from our teachers the story of independence and the battles of the revolution. and of the men of color who fought in those battles. I hope to have a little time later in this radio program, Mr. Zielkowski, to tell you a little bit more about some of my memories of Independence Day. And the other thing I wanted to mention about the Colored Orphans Asylum was my introduction to Mr. Frederick Douglass there. Now, he came to speak on several occasions to us children at the institution. I never met him up close while I was there, but I certainly had heard him speak and knew what he thought about the world. And as I became older and more worldly, I read for myself Mr. Douglass's oration that he gave July 5th, 1852. Now, I was a very young child then, and didn't read the oration until much, much later. But I do credit Mr. Frederick Douglass to helping to educate me on the difference, the distinction, the distance between the ideals and reputed values of the founders of this country and the work to be done to bring us up to snuff. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to hear you teach. Always.
Thank you, Mr. Z.
I'm back. This is Fanny.
Good. I always enjoy hearing your great-grandfather. And I have a different take on all that celebration about Independence Day and parades. I have a history of parades. And my take on it is observing the parades. I think it's a very positive thing. You know, every year when they have all the parades on television, you know, the Macy's parade around Thanksgiving, and all, of course, has something to do with independence. However, they always have a lot of flags and marching groups and everything. But observing parades, especially if they have them, you know, companies of soldiers marching or bands and playing, you know, patriotic songs and all, does inspire a feeling about, I guess, independence, about our countries and values and everything. I have a hard time, and I know I'm a rockhead, but I have a hard time focusing on the good parts of that, which lasted for very little time. Somebody had an idea back in the 1700s, I guess, and then it seemed like a good idea, but they didn't follow through on 100%. But I always felt being in a parade was a lot of work, and it didn't inspire anything except tiredness. And I marched in parades with the Curtis Bay Band because my music teacher was the founder of the Curtis Bay Band, and I took accordion lessons from Mr. Henry Rosso. And a number of summers, I spent a number of summers from the time I was about 12 or 13 up until I was a senior in high school, a junior in high school, I guess, and marching in parades in the summertime. A lot of those were sponsored by fire departments because the parade was hooked up with their carnival, and the parade often would wind up on the carnival grounds, where we would then finish the parade, and then we could get rid of our instruments, put them in the bus or in the cars if we were there with cars, and then we could have some fun and go. on the rides, if they had any rides, and some of the food. And that part I always enjoyed. But as a young person, I never got anything out of the parades as far as teaching me anything about independence or about, admiring what the founding fathers did or anything like that. I mostly have enjoyed watching parades as a spectator, of course. That's how you watch a parade, and seeing the people parading, often musical groups, military groups, and that. When I was in the military, I had to march in a number of parades, and nothing about marching in a parade to celebrate anything was, to me, an uplifting experience. It was always hard work, very demanding, usually based on a lot of practice, and never seemed to make anybody happy until it was over. And that was just because it was our focus when I was in the military was on performing as a soldier and doing it the right way. And there was little thought in why we were celebrating or what we were celebrating. So, and I know there are lots of, I guess, independence celebrations all over the world for different reasons and for different countries. And I sometimes wish that all those celebrations really had a positive effect and would get the countries of the world to finally sit down and say, we need to stop all this nonsense. We shouldn't have to have celebrations of independence and people being free and having the right to live their lives in a certain way, their way. But unfortunately, the world is young yet, and we're still struggling with trying to figure out how to behave as creatures who have such incredible powers and still don't use them as well as we could. And that goes on and on and on and on. And it's unfortunate that there isn't some simple answer to it. All the stuff. If you stop, I always thought it would be interesting to interview children along the parade route and ask them why they like the parades and seeing what they said and seeing what they got out of it. I do not remember in school being taught a whole lot about independence and about why the parades were important. In fact, I do remember that the parades in my neighborhood anyway seemed to interfere with a lot of things that really bugged people. It was fun to watch the parades and people marching and the bands playing and everything, but it also meant that there was a lot of cleanup involved. Somebody had to go behind and pick up a lot of trash, and the streets had to be swept clean and everything. And lots of times those parades were on a weekend, so that meant the city workers got extra work. Maybe that was good for them. Maybe they got extra pay. However, that meant that some of those city workers did not get to spend the holiday with their families like we, the observers, did, because they had to go and clean up afterwards. And anyway, parades are wonderful. I enjoyed being in them. They're hard work, and I'm not sure that they really do anybody any good. I do think they're costly, and I do think people like it as a celebration. There's so many things that we celebrate. I'm not sure that we really pay attention to why we're celebrating. Usually in those big events, like around the Memorial Day and things, when they have the parades and all the television, they focus on television now, but that there's usually about, I'd say maybe 15 or 20% of the time, there's a focus on the seriousness of the event and what it's supposed to reflect. But most of the time, there's a lot of singing and a lot of talking about stuff and celebrating the country and not so much trying to fix the country. And it sounds like that I'm being a poor citizen, and I hope I'm not being a poor citizen because I love my country. I just wish we would live up to our ideals and do a better job of it. So that's my story.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Stosh. So I gather you're not planning on anything special for Independence Day this year.
It's never struck me as something worthwhile celebrating. And I do love America. I volunteered and went in the Army, and I was proud to serve, and I am proud that I'm a veteran, but I still think we have such a long way to go, and it's just difficult with all the troubles we have in our country now to see that the idea that was put forth back in the 1700s has not worked yet. It's a work in progress. And I think America is a great country and could maybe someday be the greatest country in the world. But I think we keep falling down on our promises, and we haven't fixed a lot of things that we could fix pretty easily. And at this time, I think it's getting even crazier. I can't believe that one of the states, the governor of one of the states has absolutely said that all the public schools in that state have got to have Bible taught in school. They have to have Bible lessons taught. And I'm not going to mention the state because I don't want to give any positive reference to that, but that was in the paper just this past weekend. And I think the country is starting to have a real challenge. And in the next couple of years, we're going to find out whether this country is going to ever exist, because there are so many people who are trying their darndest to make this a religion-based country. There are people who incredibly wrongly and completely mistakenly claim that America was founded to be a Christian country. That was never any part of the basic plan. In fact, it was meant to have church and state completely separate. But now there are so many people in this country, especially Republican Party, that want to make the United States of America a Christian country, which it seems kind of crazy since we have so many non-Christians in our country. And also we have so many Christians in our country who are obviously not following their Christian teachings.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Have you seen your brother Tony this week?
I have seen him almost every day. I will see him after the broadcast today.
Okay. Are they celebrating July 4th at where he lives at the
I don't know.
They're not talking. He's not talking about it.
No, he's not talking about it. What he talks about is whether his back hurts, whether he can get out of bed, and when he gets out of bed, how long he's going to be sitting in his wheelchair, and then when he's tired, can he get back in bed? And his life revolves around how comfortable he can become at different times, and when he has visits. So I'm looking forward to. I will see him. We did not visit him yesterday because we went to the Kennedy Center, and we had to drive and all that stuff. But It's one of the few days that we didn't have a visit with him. Since he's been in this long-term healthcare facility that we moved him to in April, I think there have been 4 days when I didn't see him. And that's because there was something going on that I had to do that interfered with that. And then Terry would see him. But I look forward to seeing him today because then we always have a good time when I see him. And lately it's been funny. He tends to be sleepy. Depending, if I get there now after the show today, I'll get there after his lunch probably, and so that's when he tends to be sleepy. And sometimes he'll just doze off while I'm there, and it upsets him sometimes when he wakes up because then he wants to apologize. I don't tell him. I say, I'm enjoying myself. I sit here and watching you sleep, and you know, and I came to visit my brother, who I love dearly. And it's okay if you're tired and you need to rest. I'm fine sitting here with you. And after a while, if I know you're enjoying your rest and it looks like you're probably not going to wake up for a while, I'll kiss you on your head and say, I love you and I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
And, he has recently stopped worrying about apologizing so much because I told him that I really I don't mind. I'm going to go in and see him, and he and I have gotten lately to talk about the fact that he is very ill, and this is the last home he's going to have. He lives in an assisted living, not assisted living, but in a home health care kind of facility that will give him every bit of care that he needs and that we can't personally supply to him. And they are very good to him. He loves the people that work with him. Everybody likes him. He's got a great positive attitude. All the women that work with him call him Hun or Mr. Z or Tony the Tiger, something. They all have a real good positive attitude towards him because he appreciates all the help he gets there, and he lets them know that. He tells people there how much he appreciates their help. So he's in a good place, and we've had lots of discussions about where he's going next. And I have complete disagreements about that, except we have fun talking about it because he says, who knows? Sooner or later, it's getting closer and closer for both of us. We're going to find out who's right.
That's interesting.
It is, I think my brother has his Catholic upbringing has hung on to him dearly. He thinks that he was not as good a boy as he should have been all his life. So he may be headed for the dreaded promise of eternal damnation that we were threatened with as children. And I understand that, and I understand that worry. He sometimes, in the past, has been very worried when he got, where he got to the point where he thought something was wrong with his breathing was off and everything. He would get all upset about it, but now he's not so much. I think he's gotten, a better understanding that he's near the end of his life, and it may be 5 years from now, or it may be 5 days. Who knows? It really depends. His health is not good. He has a lot of bad parts to his body. His lungs are not good. His heart's not good. His liver's not good. His kidney's not good. And but he smiles every day. When I visit him, we have a lot of fun. We laugh. I can't remember any day that I've spent time with my brother when we didn't have a good laugh. Mostly at ourselves, at things we've done, and at the fun we've had together. He's been a good big brother to me all my life. He's 3 years older than I am, so for almost 83 years, he's been right with me all the time. And there are times in our adult life when he lived with me. He lived with me and my wife and my family a couple of times, and we always had a great time together. And he always helped out a lot. He always took good care of me when I was a kid, and I appreciate it. And so that's why I'm glad that he lives close to us, and we were able to move him here, and I can see him every day, and we have a good time.
I'm sure he must understand that he's done a lot of good things in his life.
Oh, he has done a lot of good things, but he's, the problem with this is just, I don't think anybody that I hate religious people. People of faith is wonderful. Yeah, if you believe in something, that's great, and I believe that everybody has a right to do that. But unfortunately, when you're raised in, like we were Catholic, every school I went to, all of my real education came from Catholic school, elementary, high school, and college, all private Catholic schools. And what they teach you, what they taught me, I don't know if they do it, this does for everybody, what they taught me was that I was probably not a very good person, and the chances of me ever getting a great reward were a lot less than the chances of me roasting in fires of hell. And so until I went through enough counseling to get rid of that notion, and I stopped fearing death, I understand somebody like my brother has a definite fear of dying because he thinks he's going to burn in hell. And what a terrible thing that is to tell children that.
Josh, is there a vacuum cleaner going in your house?
Oh, there's somebody cleaning our. I'm sorry about that. They're three rooms away. They're cleaning our some of our chairs, upholstery.
Oh, okay.
I do. Well, I can mute myself, but then I can't talk.
All right. Well, let me tell a story.
I'm going to have you tell a story. I'm sorry if that interferes.
That's okay. All right. So the second part of my storytelling today is another piece that includes T.H. Barnes, my great-grandfather. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Includes T.H. Barnes, my great-grandfather, reminiscing about some of his memories of Frederick Douglass, both meeting Frederick Douglass and learning from Frederick Douglass through reading his works. So my great-grandfather, Thomas Henry Barnes, left the New York Colored Orphans Asylum, where he had been educated, and was apprenticed to a barber in northern Pennsylvania, just across the New York state line from Binghamton. And he really enjoyed his apprenticeship there. Samuel T. Johnston was the barber's name. Johnston was considered himself a race man. He was dedicated to the uplift of African Americans and corresponded with Frederick Douglass, who eventually came and gave a speech at the public hall there in Susquehanna Junction, sometimes just called Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. That was, I think, 1866 or so, or 1867, because between 1866 and 1867. And that was a big
experience in T.H. Barnes' life, because Douglas stayed with the Johnston family. He was there for 2 days. The speech itself was highly controversial. There were a mob of young white men who were a large part of the audience at the public hall, and they were not happy that Douglas was there. They tried to meet him on the train, but Johnston figured out how to get Douglas into town safely, ensconced in his house before the townspeople realized that he was there. The hall was packed. When Douglas began to speak, there were a sizable number of men in the audience, boys really, very young men in the audience, who brought potatoes and tomatoes and other vegetables with them to throw onto the stage. A couple of them had baseball bats. But Douglas completely won them over. T.H.'s description of Douglas's speech that evening is worth listening to. I'm not going to take time to do that now, because I've told that story on the air several times, but it was a revelation to T.H. Barnes as a young man. He was in his late teens by that time. And watching Douglas on stage woo and convert the audience, these very hostile young men, was just a life-changing experience for T.H. Barnes. And he did meet Douglas on several occasions after that, and eventually became part of the Frederick Douglass Memorial Committee in Rochester, New York, that set up the memorial there, the pedestal, the monument to Frederick Douglass after he died. Douglas also stayed with my great-grandfather at least once when he was on speaking tours. T.H. Barnes and his wife, Mary Bell. People's Lot Barnes hosted Douglas at their family home while he was on tour. But one of the things that T.H. Barnes talked about as influential in his life, and reading that Douglas authored a speech that Douglas made before T.H. was grown enough to read it, but read in later life. That's probably the most famous speech that Frederick Douglass ever made, and certainly the most read of his writings, aside from his autobiographies. And it was published in the Frederick Douglass Papers and has been published in various places, especially on the 4th of July, since Douglas's death. So the speech is called "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." That is a line from the speech. It was not called that originally, but that is the title that it's commonly known by. It was delivered on July 5th, 1852 in Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York. Frederick Douglass had a long history of residence and publishing his newspaper in that part of New York State, and was invited to speak by the ladies of the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society to deliver a speech on July 5th, 1852. And it was published, printed by the Lee, Mann and Company printing company. And although there were just 100 copies originally printed in 1852, it was widely read, reprinted in the black press, certainly, and in a few of the white newspapers as well. And Susan F. Porter, who was the president of the association, of the society, and
known to Douglas before and after, also helped to publicize the speech. So it's very well known in a lot of circles and is still quoted from today. I'm just going to read parts of it. It's a very long speech. It must have taken a good hour and a half to 2 hours to deliver, and I'm only going to take about 10 minutes. But I will read some of the pieces that really speak to me. So this is Frederick Douglass speaking. On July 5th, 1852. Mr. President, friends and fellow citizens, the papers and placards say that I am to deliver a July 4th oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way for me. It is true, I've often had the privilege to speak in this beautiful hall, Corinthians, and to address many who now honor me with their presence, but neither their familiar faces nor the perfect gauge I think I have of Corinthian Hall seems to free me from embarrassment. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is to me a matter of astonishment as well as gratitude. You will not, therefore, be surprised if in what I have to say, I invent no elaborate preparation nor grace my speech with any high-sounding exordium. With little experience and with less learning, I have been able to throw my thoughts hastily and imperfectly together, and trusting to your patient and generous indulgence, I will proceed to lay them before you. For the purpose of our gathering today is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and your political freedom. This to you is what Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the clay and to the act of your great deliverance, to the signs, to the wonders associated with the act of that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. And I'm glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though a good old age for a man, is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. 80 years and 10 is the allotted time for individual men, but nations number their years by thousands. According to this fact, you are even now only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon. The eye of the reformer is met with angry flashes, portending disastrous times, but his heart may well beat lighter at the thought that America is young, that she is still in the impressible stage of her existence. May we not hope that high lessons of wisdom, of justice, of truth will yet give direction to her destiny? Were the nation older, the patriot's heart might be sadder, and the reformer's brow heavier. Its future might be shrouded in gloom, and the hope of its prophets go out in sorrow. There's consolation in the thought that America is young. Great streams are not easily turned from channels worn deep in the course of ages. There's consolation in the thought that that America is young, that older streams may sometimes rise in quiet and stately majesty and inundate the land, refreshing and refertilizing the earth with their mysterious properties. They may also rise in wrath and fury and bear away on their angry waves
the accumulated wealth of years of toil and hardship. However, gradually they flow back to the same old channel and flow on as serenely as ever. But while the river may not be turned aside, it may dry up and leave nothing behind but the withered branch and the unsightly rock to howl in the abyss sweeping wind, the sad tale of departed glory. As with rivers, so with nations. Your fathers, who had not adopted the fashionable idea of their day, the infallibility of government, and the absolute power and character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and justice of some of those burdens and restraints. Feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. Their conduct was wholly unexceptionable. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, scorn. Yet they persevered. They were not the men to look back. Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at this distance of time, regard it. Timid and the prudent, as was intimated of that day, were of course shocked and alarmed by it. Such people lived then, had lived before, and will probably ever have a place on this planet, that hate all changes, but silver, gold, and copper change. And of this sort of change, they are always strongly in favor. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men, too great to give. They were great men too, great enough to give fame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point which I'm compelled to view them is not certainly the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. They loved their country better than their own private interests, and though this is not the highest form of human excellence, you will concede that it is a rare virtue, and that when exhibited, it ought to command respect. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country. In the admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests. They were peacemen, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. Pardon me, fellow citizens. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to me, to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring your humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence, to us, who so solid, stolid, and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee when the chains of servitude had been torn from his limbs. I am not that man. But I fancy, I hear some of my audience say it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more, denounce less? Would you persuade more, rebuke less? Your cause would be more likely to succeed. But I submit where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls in the air, when the cattle on your hills, the fish of the sea, and reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then will I argue that the slave is a man. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his body? There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What to the slave, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all the other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which lie is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty, heartless, your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. There are pages more of that speech, but that's enough for today. But I strongly recommend that everybody read at least a summary and celebrate whatever progress you see since that time.
Did you have difficulty reading that?
I had
It seemed like it.
I had it printed out in small type, and I should have it's so long. I did not want to spend 40 pages typing it out, printing it out. So I printed it out in 15, and it's in very small type. And I did get confused in the middle a couple times, but I still think it's worth reading the whole thing or a summary, and giving it half an hour of your 4th of July celebration.
Yeah.
I'm done. And I think
Okay.
we're over time.
Oh, 68 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
But
shocking.
That's okay. John can cut it if you, however he wants.
You have.
I just, it's amazing.
I'm hearing
What-
a machine
Go ahead.
noise, guys. I'm hearing background whine. What is that?
Now I'll.
Oh,
It's workmen
oh,
at the other end of Stasha's house.
oh.
So that's another reason for us to end.
I'm sorry.
So Stash, you do have to say your name.